You're listening to STP Radio. Hey everybody, welcome to STP Radio, yet another riveting episode where I have a longtime friend of mine, Brad Johnson from SOASTA. He's the VP of Product Marketing and Business Development. SOASTA has been a longtime supporter and sponsor of the Software Test Professionals conferences and communities. Brad and I actually did some work, overlapped a little bit of work in the former Mercury company years ago. And so as a true performance engineer and tester myself, I appreciate another guy in the performance world who's also a performance tuner from an automotive perspective. I guess you'd call it is a gearhead the proper term, Brad?
Yes, I'm never offended by being called a gearhead.
No, it's quite a compliment to be. Yes, some people you're called a nerd in our industry. That's kind of a compliment, I guess. So welcome to STP Radio, Brad. How are you?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm really, really good and happy to be here. So.
I'd like to spend some time, Brad, just sort of talking first and foremost about the upcoming Software Test Professionals conference, which is next week in Denver. And you have there's a mutual friend of ours, Howard Charney, is going to be there. But you have a session that you're doing, which in particular I love the title, which is Jane, Stop This Crazy Thing. Which is the Jetsons reference, right?
It is a Jetsons reference, and I actually did some market research before to make sure that people actually remember the Jetsons, and it turns out that even young people do. So
even young people, yes. I'm still young if I remember the Jetsons.
I know, so am I.
Very good. But in particular, from let's say SOASTA's portfolio of products, tell me a little bit more about what the crazy thing is.
So the crazy thing is the rapid pace of the software delivery cycle. It's something we've learned over, really it's been 7 years since we've been out with Cloud Test. And what we continue to find is that the one of the key benefits that we're able to help customers realize is speed. That speed comes in the form of how long does it take to get test results to the eyeballs of the people that care. So whether that's functional test automation for mobile applications or a million user load test of a consumer-facing website, at the end of the day, what the executive IT stakeholders need is information to be able to make a decision about where do I need to tune my infrastructure, where are the bugs in the software, or do I need to buy more load balancers, right? So at the end of the day, it's how quickly can I make these decisions, because nothing is getting slower, right? So the expectation of users is that the applications are going to behave and perform extremely quickly. And by the way, we're going to change the application in a couple of weeks. So that crazy thing is just this increasing pace of what users expect from an application.
Yeah. So some people, in the software testing world remember working for very large, slow-moving organizations. You think just from a tooling perspective and honestly from a virtualization and cloud perspective, they're leveraging the concepts of the cloud, if not actual cloud technology, which is, to you and I mean, to SOASTA, it's not a new thing. Maybe talk a little bit about just how cloud is still creating opportunity or still accelerating.
Yeah, what I love about cloud computing is that back in 2008, or actually 2007, when I first heard about it, people were talking about, hey, there's this thing, it's the cloud, and it's about virtualization, and it'd be cool. You can manage a lot of different servers and so on and so forth. The guys at SOASTA actually picked up on that, and that's one of our major pivots. Is once we realized that cloud computing or the ability to grab 5, 10, 1,500 servers to do something with, and then turn them loose when you were done, was a perfect platform for load testing. And I think anybody that thinks about that now goes, oh yeah, well of course it is. And so at this point, what you see is that anyone with an open source load testing tool or any kind of other load testing tool is absolutely capitalizing on the reality that there's dozens of cloud computing platforms out there, so of course we'll set up some load generators and drive load, and that's just a no-brainer at this point. And so, I can talk a lot about, what's different about SOASTA, and I'll go back to my original point that, what's different is about, how quickly can you get results from those efforts? But what's really happened with cloud computing for testers and for the development community, it goes far beyond just load testing. And I think what's really cool is the ability to, for instance, spin up a test environment in the cloud. So you look at some companies that are out there that have actually built a business, and actually, frankly, I wouldn't be in the cloud computing space if it weren't for companies who did like lab management in the cloud and things like that, even back in 2008.
Yeah.
But the opportunity is awesome. So think about running a load test. Well, there's a couple constraints. There always have been. Sure, the load generators and the tool to run and all that kind of stuff. But also, I need an environment robust enough to actually support a load test of even a couple hundred users.
Oh, yeah.
Because certainly my dev laptop is not going to support that. And surprisingly, that's why developers don't care about performance, because couldn't ever actually test on that.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we're running a huge Oracle rack cluster in production, but isn't MySQL the same as Oracle on my laptop?
It is to most developers.
Well,
right?
if you're just thinking of SQL calls, the code, yeah, but not the infrastructure. So,
and that's the awesome point about what you can do with cloud computing. I had a great conversation with one of the big global SIs about this. It's like, so now you can actually spin up a test environment that has a significant amount of infrastructure. If you use some really cool new technologies like Puppet or Chef, you can actually push your configuration out, have that thing running in 10 minutes, run your tests, and turn the whole thing off. And that then opens up a whole new set of opportunities for all kinds of testing, but specifically load testing a lot earlier for companies than they ever were able to think about before.
Yeah, or at least gaining some performance insight earlier so that if you need to adjust, you can get that idea sooner. Now, another aspect, if we get back to sort of the crazy thing, the speed thing, are you going to talk a little bit about how to bring performance into CI?
Yeah, that's actually the core. So continuous integration has been a really, really fun adventure for me personally, as well as something that I see as completely impacting quality teams down the road. Ran a webinar just this morning, and 8% of the people on the webinar, there were a couple hundred on, still didn't know what continuous integration is. The problem with that is that every developer on the planet knows what continuous integration is. We need, as testers, to embrace the fact that we are going continuous everything. Take it or leave it. A couple years ago, when we brought our mobile test automation product to market, we were using Jenkins for continuous integration as a development team here at SOASTA, and we quickly commercialized that capability with a set of plugins so that you could not only run unit tests, which is what you do with continuous integration frameworks, but you could also run functional automation, and in our case, for mobile with real mobile devices. Well, that plugin works for performance tests too on our platform.
Yep.
And so very rapidly, and we need to take some credit for this as SOASTA. We very rapidly began talking about, well, gee, if you're doing continuous testing for mobile automation, or for web automation, or for whatever, you're moving, kind of into that QA space, or why not run performance tests as part of your regression suite? And we began talking about that a little over maybe a year and a quarter ago. And I'll tell you, Mark, we were the only ones really talking about it because it's still something that not a lot of companies are doing. But we did run our first webinar on the topic over a year ago, and 6 of our customers came in right after and said, we want to do that. And they are, and they have been. And so I'll tell you, this continuous performance testing thing is part of either a Jenkins platform or a Bamboo setup or whatever for continuous integration is really catching on, because what it does is it does exactly what I said earlier. It allows developers to do low-scale performance testing early, and that allows the whole team to get an idea of what performance of the app looks like early on. And all you got to do is, if you stick up a metric on a Jenkins dashboard that says today's performance is, 3.5 seconds, it's going to get people talking. Mm-hmm. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. But it'll start the conversation about performance sometimes weeks before or months before it ever happened before.
Yeah. The truth nature of George Jetson on The Crazy Thing is that if your release cycle moves faster, your opportunity to correct performance problems in any bug is all that opportunity comes around much faster than it used to. So to me, that's the true physical implementation of an agile concept mentally.
No question. The terminology is just evolving as well, right? So whether you call it continuous or agile or DevOps or whatever, it's this closed loop capability that as we talked about earlier, if you're actually you're running a continuous process and you have to stop completely every 6 weeks, and what if you find a core architectural issue that requires you redevelop or rethink how you do, as you mentioned, caching or session management or anything, it can actually bring a project back, back to the beginning. And so if you start early, it obviously is better.
Now, one of the things that I like about SOASTA solution is that you can sort of it puts testers in the spotlight and gives them the tools they need to integrate with anyone. You could have 12 different teams. One is doing the Java platform, one in .NET, one is doing Jenkins, another one Bamboo, another one homegrown. You can, with the API set, you can plug Cloud Test into just about anything, as well as the touch test stuff, right?
Totally. And going back to a lot of QA teams don't know how CI can help them. One of the things that I like to talk about and that we help implement at customers is I actually don't care if your engineering team is using continuous integration or not. You can take that build, because that's what you do. You take the build and test it. You can take that build, you can plug it into an integration framework like Jenkins, like Bamboo. You can even plug it into some other commercial offerings, and then because the interface to SOASTA is fairly simple. You can have it invoke whatever kind of tests you built in the SOASTA platform and report back into those continuous integration frameworks. Very, very easily. And really all of our plugins start as a command line integration utility that someone writes, usually one of our engineers, that we turn into a plugin. Definitely easy to plug into these systems. And I encourage everyone that I talk to who are, in a testing organization to really look at, okay, if you're automating functional testing, obviously load testing is an automation process. Continuous integration is all about automating everything. So you just need to continue to find what aren't you automating. And so to plug it into those frameworks is very simple.
Yeah, very cool. Now if we shift gears just a little bit and kind of connect back to, you've got continuous integration accelerating things and also look at sort of cloud accelerating things. I talk to a lot of testers who are maybe not automation folks first. And you mentioned Puppet or Chef and several different tools, some open source, some commercial. To a lot of testers, they look at their future as being dominated by, I got to learn all these different tools. From a historical perspective and looking forward, what do you see for the future of a tester having to either juggle all these tools, or how do you make sense of a path for your future, given all the landscape changing this way?
Yeah, you and I have both been around in this marketplace for a long time, and we've seen a lot of changes. In a lot of ways, a lot of things are still the same, right? There's still the talk about you must automate, right? And you must do performance testing and all. And so some of that stuff stays the same. But I'll be honest, things are getting faster and faster and faster, and what there's a trend in engineering, to automate tasks that really are mundane, that are not leveraging the intellect and the kind of analytical capabilities of humans. So to the point that if you're doing something more than 2 or 3 times and you don't expect it to change much, automate.